Hey guys, welcome back to the Overseers. My name's Proilios and I'm joined once again by my co-host Nightwing. Today we'll be talking about where we think each of the teams in the Summer Showdown stand, and also giving some well-deserved shoutouts to some other teams which came close but could not qualify for the Hawaii playoffs. Um, Alright, so before we do that, guys, just remember, if you like our videos, do leave an actual like. And if you want to join more Overwatch League fans, do join our Discord server. We have a lot of watch parties and things, and I'm sure you'll have a good time here. Um, Alright then. Nightwing, I want to get your thoughts on the knockouts first. How do you think they went? Because there were some pretty fun matches in there and a lot of stiff competition.
Yeah, I think the knockouts were really interesting to watch, especially the ones in NA, but the ones in APAC were also pretty good. I think, especially in NA, a lot of those matches could have gone really either way for a lot of these teams. Uh, you saw Paris had a close game with Washington. You saw that Washington then went on to have a close game against Fuel. Glads had a close game against Atlanta as well. Uh, Glass did 3-0 Boston. But apart from that, all these other teams were very close. And it came down to just very minor things that led to one or the other team winning. So insanely competitive, which was really interesting. I do have to say that Glad's Atlanta match, though, was very cursed, honestly. I mean, the entire match, it was a 5-mapper, and apart from control, no team capped any points. Like, either Glads would full hold or Atlanta would full hold, which was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Where these teams just did not know how to attack from the looks of it, or just were very good at defense. So, yeah, insanely competitive, insanely fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty pretty close between a lot of these teams. And although I didn't catch all of the action, I did watch bits and pieces from every match. And I have to say, no team looked like a massive underdog going to the knockouts, and I think that's something we all love to see as Overwatch League fans. It's always a much healthier atmosphere when everyone stands somewhat of a chance. So, yeah, absolutely loved it. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the Summer Showdown playoffs go at Hawaii, which will begin tomorrow. So, yeah, before we actually talk about the teams, though, we did want to, the teams that qualified, first of all, are the Atlanta Rain, the Dallas Fuel, the Chengdu Hunters, and the Shanghai Dragons. And we will detail our thoughts on them in just a bit. But we also want to shout out 4 teams that uh, did still impress us, even though they couldn't make the playoffs, which are the Paris Eternal, the Washington Justice, the LA Gladiators, and the Seoul Dynasty. So I think let's quickly touch upon these shout out teams first, and yeah, let's kick things off with the Paris Eternal. I think I'll share my thoughts on them first. So the Paris Eternal, like during the initial qualifying matches they had, like the regular season matches, they looked quite good. They had some really close games against the LA Gladiators and the San Francisco Shock. And all in all, I think they looked really good and were also one of the more consistent teams. Uh, like they always maintained the level of play. I don't think they were disappointing in any way. There's just that there were just some other teams that edged them out in terms of average skill. So that's where they lost, in my opinion. But we saw some good things from pretty much all of the starting 6 players. Like we saw Dan having some decent showings on the Wrecking Ball, Reinhardt, Orisa, almost all the main tanks. Khan's BAP has been really impressive. Then we saw Onigod and Naga absolutely popping off on some of the signature heroes, such as like McCree for Onigod and then Echo and May for Naga. And Drito has also been a really nice influence. I think he's definitely been an upgrade over Neptuno because he's been a good and versatile main support. He hasn't looked uncomfortable on Lucio, Mercy, or Brigitte. And then we also have the sort of flashy new rookie, that's Vestola. I know he's not trying to be flashy, but he's just been a super impressive diva player. And yeah, I think they deserve some respect from us for their showings during the qualifiers. What are your thoughts, Nightwing?
Yeah, I think it's just Dridro's 4G is too powerful. It's just all-consuming bandwidth that's just taking over the Paris Eternal and making them really good. Neptuno never stood a chance, honestly. His internet is just inferior due to its wired nature. Whereas Dridro's internet is just unchained.
And that's where we announce a new sponsor, Timo. I'm kidding. We are not Platchat. We are not there yet.
Yeah. So definitely Dridro has been, I think, better than Neptuno at least. And it seems to be coming together for the Paris Eternal. Vestola has looked really, really good. I'm very pleasantly surprised by how well he's been doing. And he's looked quite versatile, not like the diva one tricks of Tranxen that we've seen in the past. So he has good flexibility. He's looked good on Sigma, good on the Zarya as well. I think he played Zarya maybe once or twice. And obviously Diva is quite good. So good on the Paris Eternal. Dan was looking pretty poor in his earlier showings in the season, but as the season has gone on, he's looked a lot more confident. He's been able to make these very unorthodox calls. Like you saw Naga swap to the fire in one of these matches, where that wasn't actually what the plan was, according to the coaching staff, but it's just an in-game call that Dan made, which did work out very well. So, in that sense, his IGLing, I guess, has just become more confident. So, lots of things coming together for the Paris Eternal. And I think they did show that by having some insanely good showings recently. They did fall at the end against the Washington Justice, but honestly, the Washington Justice almost beat the Fuel, who have been dominating all season so far. So, in that sense, I think you got to give props to Paris because they did play quite well.
Yep. And you also want to quickly touch upon the Washington Justice and how they were during these qualifiers.
Okay, so for the Justice, I think when they got to play what they wanted to play, they definitely, uh, looked very strong. I think at the end, uh, in that Washington Fuel match, you could really see that Washington, just based off of how smart their individual players are, for the most part, understood that their defensively oriented kind of play style was not really working out that well. But the thing is, they were not very used to that aggro play style. And the faster you play the game, the faster your pace is as an Overwatch team, the easier it is to also find your mistakes. And that's something you have to fine tune through thorough scrimming. So you could see that in the earlier maps uh, between Washington and Fuel, Mag was actually able to get the better of Fearless on that Reinhardt uh, with remarkable consistency, honestly. But when it came down to those final few maps, you could see that Washington realized that they had to up the pace on those team fights, and that's where Mag struggled because his supports were not able to keep up. I think Bebe was struggling to keep people healed up, especially. And Mag did try to go for some of those risky plays and try and be the hero in that situation, but it didn't work out quite that well for them. But when they were able to play their own pace, something that they were used to, slow, methodical play, where their comms were not as spread thin just because of how chaotic the situation was. That's when the Washington Justice did have a clear gameplay plan in mind that they were able to execute, and they did that really well. I think with some just better fine tuning, or maybe just on a better day, they could definitely have beaten the Fuel and actually uh, have been in the actual tournament. So big props to them. I was really low on the coaching staff uh, this season, and I'm still honestly quite low on Bebe. But while I do still think those issues are there with the team, they're looking a lot better. So yeah.
I think once again, what Washington's players have proven is that they are all individually skilled, but if it's not the right meta, they're just not able to click. So I think because once again in this meta they were able to play some of the comfort picks more often, that uh, helped translate their play into something a little more cohesive. So we saw things like Mag completely returning to form on Winston. He also played a great Rhine against Fearless in the knockouts. And then we also saw Fury really coming into his own as one of the great like OG goat off tanks, you could say. We were once again reminded how good his Zarya play is last week. His Sigma has been really good, and he's also kind of the Joey Chestnut of the Overwatch League in the sense that he's eating everything on Diva. Like the man's absolutely legendary. And then you also had a really consistent and exceptional Sombra showing by Assassin, which is something I'd completely not anticipated. Like Assassin uh, was more so known for heroes like Echo and Genji. I actually had no idea Sombra was that good. But he's been really good, and then you also had Decay kind of looking better and better individually on things like the Tracer, even on the Hanzo, which he was playing in like the Tracer Echo comp the Hanzo Echo comp that Justice ran. And yeah, even Jerry's looked good in the sort of niche maps that he's been able to play. So good on the Justice, and I wish them luck for the Countdown Cup, which will be the final tournament before the actual playoffs in this season.
Something I want to mention about Decay is that yeah, his Tracer looked really good, but when he was playing the Sim, which seems to be one of the strongest characters apparently in this season, strangely enough,
Yeah.
he his Sim gameplay sometimes did revolve around him just solo TPing and flanking the enemy team. He was basically playing Tracer as Sim, which I found really interesting because uh, he- that guy just has kind of that carry mentality, and I think because the team was not clicking, he felt like he needed to make those plays, and they often did work out because Decay is Decay. But it's just a very interesting, just stylistic difference between Decay and most other Symmetra players that have had success this season around.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I actually didn't notice that, but maybe that's because I didn't really watch all of these matches in detail. But that's a really nice thing. I'll watch out for that as well. Alright, should we then talk about the LA Gladiators really quick? Um, so the Gladiators had once again a really impressive showing in the Summer Showdown. They were quite they had some really high highs, and they were able to put up really impressive individual showings, and also work together well as a team. So I think everyone pretty much on their starting roster was really impressive. You saw Muse and Space being a really good tank duo. I think Muse had the most inconsistent showing probably out of all of the gladiators. But Space, like a fantastic Diva and Sigma showing on during these qualifiers. Then you also had Shu, absolutely proving that he's one of the best flex supports in the league this year. He's like really versatile and consistent. He plays every flex support to a high level, and I think especially his Batiste has been phenomenal this season. His resource management, just as it's just as good as it is on Ana. So do watch out for that and check him out in the replay viewer if you can. We also saw some nice showings from Kevster, who's like a really he's a true flex god, right? His Echo has been ridiculously good. Tracer has been formidable. His May play has been consistent. And he was probably the best DPS on this roster during these qualifiers. But you did also see some kind of mess ups with things like Birdring and Mirror's Sombras, which were pretty lackluster and pretty faulty in most scenarios. I think if you just stick to Birdring on traditional hitscan heroes like the McCree, Ash, sometimes even Reaper, that's best for the team. And Just maybe keep Mirror as like a Doom and Echo player, I guess, because his Sombra didn't look good either. And yeah, special shout out to Skewed for being like probably the best brig in the league. I was really confused. I think Nightwing remembers how long I was ranting about this guy being picked up, but it makes sense that he was added as a brig specialist and not like a starting flex support on this roster. So yeah, Nightwing, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, so I think my thoughts are quite similar in the sense that uh, who do I think are the consistent players for this team, at least from this past tournament? I think Space has looked consistent. I think Skewed has looked incredibly consistent and incredibly good on that brig all season long. Uh, and I think Kevster has been incredibly consistent, and he's had some honestly carry performances for the team. Uh, I think Shu, while he is mechanically very talented, uh, at the end this past week, he was quite down on himself actually. If you saw what he's been tweeting,
Mm-hmm.
where he was getting picked off the first in a lot of these fights due to just positional mistakes and probably miscommunication with the rest of the team. And in terms of his mechanics, his play was still very much there, but there's just a few slip ups from his regular norm that uh, lead me to not quite call him that consistent this particular tournament cycle. But that said, he's still, he's a gifted player. Birdring Sombra is something that I've had my reservations about for a long time. Uh, it's just not a role that he's very well suited on. I think he struggles with landing EMPs, uh, and the team just does not really know how to work with him a lot of the time. He did get some good EMPs here and there, but it's just not something you can rely upon. Uh, Especially considering that just swapping to the Sombra is kind of a gamble, even though EMP is an incredibly destructive ult and helps regain your ult economy. It's a hero that also takes away a huge chunk of damage away from your team, right? So it's a hero that you need to get value on, and if you don't, like Birdring often did not, then you're gonna have a rough time, and that's kind of what just let the Gladiators down to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
But apart from that, I think Gladiators still did have a good showing. I think they could have overtaken the reign if they were just a bit better at uh, just playing that Sombra comp. Honestly, I think Birdring's struggle on that hero and the team's struggle in general to kind of work around that comp is kind of what led to their downfall. Uh, but apart from that, they did do quite well. So still a big shout out to them. And I hope that Deepe can kind of find a middle ground between him completely leading the charge, which is what he claimed he would do at the beginning of this tournament cycle. And I mean, it kind of worked, not really. And the players leading the charge for the comps that are being played, which was what was being done in the previous tournament, where the Gladiators did go 4-0, if I remember correctly. But that said, it's just something that the team needs to work out internally, and good luck to them for doing that.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, let's talk about a final sort of shout out team, which is the Seoul Dynasty. And yeah, I think you can go first on this one.
Yeah, so the Chengdu Hunters, no, wait, sorry, the Seoul
The Seoul
Dynasty, right?
Dynasty, yeah.
Yeah. So the Seoul Dynasty actually is a bit of an this unlucky set of events for them, honestly, because I was not very impressed with Chengdu or Fusion during their match. I honestly thought it was kind of a toilet bowl. Whereas Seoul, when they had some ideal conditions to play, they looked really really good. Uh, but then the second week that they had to play in the qualifiers, I think Profit was ill, and he's one of their only two DPS players, so he kind of had to rush out and play that match
Did they have
with all
Sebiolvi?
his. They do have Sabiol B, but I mean he hasn't really been played at all this
True,
season, right?
yeah.
So I mean, also there's that whole controversy with him. I don't really know how much he's actually involved with the team, to be perfectly honest with you.
Mm.
Uh, that said, at least from what I believe their GM posted on Twitter, I'm not really sure. Prophet wanted to play, so they made him play. Either way, it's still an ill person that actually ended up playing the game. So that's just kind of a bummer for them. That said, I think they still had a close game with the Chengdu Hunters, and they could have clutched it out. But it just didn't really come to fruition. I think Chengdu looked a bit improved compared to their honestly pretty terrible performance a bit earlier on. They seem to be playing Among a bit more than Gaga, which I'm not really sure about. But I mean, he is just the quintessential ball player, and it's a home stand, so you gotta make the Chinese fans happy too, I guess. But yeah, it's an interesting roster change that I'm not sure if it actually helps the Chengdu Hunters that much, because I think Gaga's ball is also quite strong. But it's just what they're going with. I think Chengdu is gonna be the weakest kind of team in this upcoming tournament. But yeah, Seoul didn't beat them, so too bad for them, I guess.
And yeah, I think we can just like segue into our thoughts on the qualifying teams, because I actually have nothing more to add for the Seoul Dynasty. I think you pretty much spoke accurately about them. So let's just talk about the Chengdu Hunters. Let's gauge what their chances are in the Summer Showdown. And do you want to go first? You already sort of settled into it a little bit, so yeah, go on.
Yeah, so I'm quite convinced that Chengdu is the weakest team in the tournament, just because they have not really had any good showings that make them like the decisive victor of anything, honestly. They looked incredibly confused about what to do against the Fusion, and the Fusion looked incredibly confused as well. And I mean, they did win against Seoul, but honestly, Seoul looked a little bit lost as well compared to their pretty good performance in the first week that they played in this tournament cycle. So, and also, I think APAC as a whole, apart from the Shanghai Dragons, is just overall weaker than the teams in NA on average. So, yeah, I mean, including the change, the swap up with Amon coming in a lot of the time for the ball instead of Gaga, and Eviltal coming in at times. That Nisha Eviltal swap at random times, where I'm not sure why either player is being subbed in, especially since you see Eviltal playing Brig as well as Nisha playing Brig. So it doesn't really make that much sense to me, but they've got something working around in the background. Rui has his crack pipe. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think they stand a lot of chance in this tournament, honestly.
Yeah, I think they are like the weakest team going into this tournament. I don't think they are like really, really weaker compared to the other three, but they still kind of are the underdogs. Let me just go through like their players and what I think of them, at least the ones that are playing. So, firstly, like you said, like they've been putting Among in instead of Gaga at times. I think both of these players have really just shown out on the wrecking ball. Among, like just the difference is that we've known Among for longer. And even though Gaga came in being touted as being touted even by me as potentially like one of the best main tanks joining the league this year, I think even his best showings have been on Hammond and nothing else. Although he hasn't looked bad, like I'll say he's not bad on any of the main tanks, but he's not like really dominant either on the rest. So I guess it's okay. Then Late Young, well, he's the new off tank and he exists, I guess. On the DPS front, it's a big boon to them that they've got Leave, because he's a carry level player. He's kind of like the decay of the Chengdu Hunters in that sense. So Leave is, I think he's one of the most consistent tracer players in the league, or even just overall DPS players in the league, and he's just super aggressive on whichever hero he plays, whether it's the Tracer, whether it's the Echo. He's really mechanically skilled, and he's like always dealing damage to the enemy team. He's always applying pressure, going for pickoffs, and yeah, I think he's probably the only reason I think that the Hunters stand even like a little bit of a chance in the Summer Showdown. Uh, because like the other DPS that they have are Jimmy and Jinmu. Like Jimmy is like a map-based sniper specialist. Like his Widow can be deadly, but not always. And then they have the man, the myth, the legend Jinmu. He's like basically known for being the only man skilled enough to make Pharah work consistently at the Overwatch League level. And yeah, although Sombra has been improving, I don't think he's going to like be the cornerstone for this team's success. And on the support front, like I think they had a really good start with Monk and Farway towards the beginning of the season on flex support, but they've gone a bit quiet now. And they have Yuveltal and Nisha, whose rotation is once again quite confusing. And they've, I don't know if it's a thing with Coach Rui, but both of these players, when they're playing Mercy, they aren't afraid to go for blood. So that's something really funny, because there's not many aggressive Mercies out there, and Chengdu have managed to get like two of the only ones that exist. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Redraw on Paris was not living up to Neptuno. So Rui said, you know what, let me pick it up.
True.
I'd also like to add that Karo Cookie is just a complete non-factor on the team.
Yeah, I didn't even like that. There was no need for me to even mention him, because I don't think they are going to play him. They've just been playing Leave and Jinmu for the most part this tournament. So yeah, it's just strange, like I said. Taro Cookie, man, remains to be seen.
They've got big school of players signed, but they're still just gonna play Leave to carry and Jinmu to play the silly heroes, which I mean works, I guess. It pleases the crowd, but it's just not gonna be enough to win the Summer Showdown.
Yeah, definitely. But I think we both know that like the team that's probably favored to win the Summer Showdowns also from APAC, which is the Shanghai Dragons. So I think I'll just quickly go over my thoughts on them. If you're done talking about the Hunters, that is.
Yeah, go ahead.
Alright. So the Shanghai Dragons, I think Nightwing and I are both in agreement that they are the strongest team coming into this double elimination bracket. And just to go over sort of where they stand, I think they're on the tank front. Fate, since the previous tournament, has definitely improved a lot on Wrecking Ball. But he's also been playing Orisa really well since his time on the Florida Mayhem, which played a lot of double shield strats and kind of prevailed on them, I guess. And Void has been a really consistent off tank, and he's also maintained kind of his high level of Sigma play, which kind of helps them play that ball Sigma strategy more often now. And obviously they've got the reliable DPS line of Fleta and Lip. And even more so than Fleta, I think Lip is kind of standing out to me more this time. He's probably one of the most versatile hitscan players out there, because he can play those traditional hitscan heroes like Ashe, Widow, McCree, and even those flankers like Reaper and Sombra. So like he's got really good mechanical skill. He's really aggressive on those flankers. Like you will see some Sombras which always go for those team-based hacks to set up plays, but no, Leave will just go on solo flanks, and he will because his tracking is so good, he'll just get solo kills on the enemy DPS or supports, which is great to see. And his hit scan, on the contrary, is like more pressure oriented, where he's not trying to go for those headshots all the time. He's just trying to apply pressure wherever possible, and this kind of like style where he focuses on damage over pick potential is quite interesting, because not many scan players go for it, but it's been working out well so far. And finally, on the support line, you've naturally got Lee Jae-gon, who just sometimes feeds but also pops off. I think that's kind of his tagline, but he's been like a consistent and surprisingly safe like player for the most part this season, although he's been making some really risky plays on Lucian Brig especially. And then you've got Izzyaki, who's definitely a really competitive flex support. His ability use is great, mechanics are great. I've been really impressed with his Ana as while the Dragons play that Winston dive, and he's also not afraid to DPS in his healing downtime, which is really nice. And that's just his Ana. His Zen is even more impressive. I've always been quite high on it, and yeah, he's just super consistent, and looking forward to seeing what he can do this time. Yeah, Nightwing, it's your turn, I guess.
Yeah, so here's a fun stat. In the past 5 matches that the Shanghai Dragons have played, they have dropped 1 map.
Yeah.
And they also won the previous tournament. They look just incredibly dominant. And honestly, I think the reason why we're so high up on Shanghai and kind of we think that Shanghai is going to win the tournament is not because they seem to have improved hugely over the past tournament. It's because, to be perfectly honest with you, at least for me, it's because the only people that were really contesting them, the Dallas Fuel, look a little bit shaky compared to before, and they've just been met
Yeah.
with a lot more competition than Shanghai has. And that's kind of the main reason why I think the Shanghai Dragons will just win the tournament. I think Atlanta is definitely up and coming. I think that's a team that actually has improved from the previous tournament cycle. But even then, I think Shanghai is just kind of the obvious winner here, at least for me, where I think pretty much every one of those players is kind of just in the prime position to win at the moment. I think for Lip, I think he had a game recently. I don't know which match it was exactly. Though many Shanghai games just kind of feel like a blur because you know Shanghai's going to win anyway. But in one of these games, I believe Lip actually on the Sombra had more damage than any other DPS player in the lobby, and he's playing Sombra, which is a hero that does not really do that much damage. Uh, there was players playing Tracer, Echo, like McCree or Ash or something, and Lib just out damaged all of them on Sombra, which is honestly just crazy. I think his EMPs sometimes actually do leave a little bit to be desired recently, but ever since last season, we've been calling him probably the best Sombra in the world, and I mean, if it's working for them, then it's working. So everyone else, I think, is doing great. I think Faith, like you said, is looking comfortable now, despite how shaky his performance looked at the beginning of the season. I think they've worked out some of the kinks in the team quite well. Obviously, not. I honestly don't have a lot of faith in whoever they're keeping on the bench. I don't think Huaryu is going to see the light of day for a while, especially. But as well as develop, it's just Contenders silent, kind of sitting on the bench. But that's because they have an amazing tier of players at the forefront. So yeah, I think Shanghai is just very well suited to win the tournament.
Alright, then let's move on to the NA teams, and let's kick things off with the Atlanta Reign. They've been a team that's improved massively, like you said before, and they are once again looking like I would say they're looking like the stronger NA team this time round. What do you think?
I wouldn't be too sure, but I think if you look at just average performance, probably in recent times, you would probably think of that uh, that the Atlanta Reign do look slightly better coordinated and just overall a bit more consistent than the Dallas Fuel. I think it's just the fact that Dallas Fuel, uh, they just have that kind of clutch potential a little bit more, where I would say that's really the only factor that makes me think that the Dallas Fuel may have an edge over them. Where apart from that, I think Atlanta do look really good. I think Gate is comfortable on all the tanks that are currently being played. Uh, not so much the ball, but I don't think they're going to lean into that too hard. It's mostly going to be the Ryan and Rissa that I think they're going to rely upon. So that's fine. I think Edison has been looking really good on Symmetra. Uh, he's a player that kind of got sidelined, even though he's quite a good hit scan player earlier on. He was kind of being only used for control, where Kai would come in for all the other maps to play the long range hit scan. But now that hit scan has just declared to not exist by the developers of the game as well as the players of the game, Edison has come in. He's looking really solid on that Symmetra, and Pelican is a freak as usual. His May play, his Echo play, everything is looking great. Iris is looking incredibly good. I think he's a player that has really stepped into his own this season after looking very shaky and almost looking like a downgrade from Dogman at times last season when he initially came in. But I think now that they've got him working within the team, within that system properly, he's been looking really good. Hawk is quite consistent. Masa is consistent. So overall, just the Atlanta Rains have definitely having a good time, and arguably, yes, they could be the second best team in this tournament after the Shanghai Dragons, and probably the stronger NA team as well. But I don't know. I don't think the gap between the Dallas Fuel and the Atlanta Rain is too large. It's just those very fine things that I don't think it's very easy to quantify, really.
Mm-hmm. I pretty much agree with what you said. I think it's really hard to say which team is better, but I think maybe because of recency bias, I think the Rain are better. They've just been looking more and more consistent. I agree with you that Dallas was shaky a little bit this time round, so maybe that's why I'm also instinctively going with Atlanta as the better team. But I think the sort of key factor in their victories has been Pelican. I think he's still the best Echo in the league, and like he's kind of like a really underrated uh, talent when it comes to the Overwatch League. I think a lot of people think he's a really good player, but I think he's been playing like an absolute goat. He could probably be like one of the Rookie of the Year candidates, probably along with someone like Shy. But yeah, Pelican, like his Echo is just insane. He's super accurate with his try shots, and I think out of all of the Echoes, he's the one that's able to adapt the best because he can switch between a more reserved and a flanky playstyle with more ease. So you'll often see him like not play too far off from the enemy team, but instead be on flank angles and then go for individual pickoffs. But if the team is going for like a more pokey kind of mid fight, then you'll see him lean back, just kind of farm his ultimate, play off angles and things like that. So he's really disciplined, and I think that's going to be a big factor in Atlanta's run through this bracket. Um, all right, then let's talk about our final team then, which is the Dallas Fuel. Um, do you want to go first or should I?
You can go ahead.
All right, so Dallas Fuel, runner-ups from the June Joust. I guess as Fearless said, they just want to beat the Shanghai Dragons and complete kind of a revenge arc, which actually Shanghai completed before them last tournament. Um, but yeah, you've seen now Fearless as not only kind of a really good Winston player, but also an excellent Reinhardt player. Even though like he's always stood out for his monkey play with those amazing primals, those like really good call outs to his team. He's shown excellent leadership skills as well, and that's also translated to his Reinhardt gameplay, which although he's been Rein diffed in a few team fights by players like Gator and Mag, he's still shown some top tier gameplay. And then you've got Hanbin, who's I would say still the best diva in the league. Absolutely amazing decision making skills and like switches between dealing and eating damage at the right time. And then you've got like the ever so consistent DPS line of Sparkle and Doha. I think we all pretty much know what we get with Doha, and every game he's never disappointing. And then you've got the explosive potential of Sparkle. I think the fact that Doomfist is really good in this meta has done this team more good than any other, because Sparkle's Doomfist is just at like a different tier of play, and he's also one of those few DPS that can make Genji work in this meta, like he did in the last meta. And I think it's not based on like those Dragon Blades, like because Genji has pretty much been reduced to a blade bot in recent metas, but Sparkle is someone that can show off his skills during the mid fight on Genji, and that's really impressive. And obviously, you've got Fielder, kind of one of the few Moiras in the league that we can call elite, just because he charges up his scores really fast. And I think the thing with Fielder is he's the hero of the team because he's not trying to be the hero of the team, right? Because he focuses on being like a good boy, healing his team, allowing them to tank a lot of damage, and in that process, he builds up his ultimates really quickly. And he does that on Moira as well as on Batiste. Because on Batiste, often you'll see players like Shu and Izayaki going for damage half the time and healing half the time. You'll see Fielder just primarily focused on healing. If nobody's like, if nobody needs absolutely any healing, then he'll start shooting people. But other than that, he just gets up really fast amp matrices as well. So yeah, the team's looking really solid. Uh, I think they can definitely be better than the Atlanta Rain as well, but it all depends on how they play on the given day. Because Atlanta's level of play is pretty much like it's pretty much a straight line on a graph, I think, in the Summer Showdown, whereas Dallas's goes a little bit up and down. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the fuel. What do you think, Nightwing?
Yeah, so the reason that I can't in good faith put the rain over fuel is just because um ju- like the week before this past one, the fuel did beat the Atlanta Rain 3-2. So it's just hard for me to uh, completely justify the rain being better than the fuel. That said, I do think it's quite close. It was a 3-2 match, so on a different day, probably Atlanta could have taken it. Um, anyway, yeah, so the Dallas Fuel. The storyline continues of Fearless just being the anime protagonist of season 4 here, where they're just continuing to go still up and up. They keep making to these finals, and I mean to these playoffs, and all of them look incredibly good. I think, uh, weirdly enough, I think out of the DPS duo of the Fuel, it's Sparkle that is more consistent than Doha, because I think Sparkle is just consistently good on pretty much anything that he picks up. Whereas Doha, sometimes you see him struggling on some of the heroes that he flexes onto. I think when he was playing the Reaper, for example, in the last meta, there would be some matches where he would play incredibly well, and other matches where you would kind of wonder what is Doha doing. Whereas Sparkle, I think, has looked a lot more consistent. I think, yeah, Fearless and Hanbin looking great. The entire team knows how to work around these TPs really well. I think they've kind of figured that out almost to an exact science, honestly, where they know how to engage and disengage, which is something that comes through some really good scrim practice as well as good communication with your team. Where you saw teams like the Shock also kind of attempt these inventive just TP strats. But the thing is that the communication on the Shock at the moment is just not that refined uh, because of some new additions they've made. Whereas the Dallas Fuel, they know each other quite well. They've worked with each other for a long time. And so they kind of know how to communicate very well. And they've had a lot of time to refine on that. And that's why the same TP that they need to take, as well as the May walls that they need to make, all of these are incredibly coordinated. Everyone on the team knows what their role is and what is going to happen in game before it happens. And that's where the Fuel really have that edge, along with the incredibly just individually talented players just across the board, where all of them have, like I said earlier, that clutch potential. Obviously, the most notable one would be Sparkle on that Doomfist, but even then, a lot of these players can just show up on uh, just at any time. Hanbin can do really well on that diva. Fearless can randomly pop a primal, and you'll have 3 people dead on your team without you realizing it. Um, Doha can do really well on that Echo, as well as some other heroes. And Fielder and Jex are an incredibly consistent backline. And Rappel is a very good bench warmer at the moment, but he's there for moral support. And I'm all for it. So yeah, great job by Coach Rush. I think they might really be one of the only contenders to Shanghai this season. Uh, and if they can clutch it out against Shanghai, then that's all the power to them. I think it's just the fact that I think we might be being a little unfair to the Dallas Fuel, honestly, uh, in the sense that it's more like the other teams kind of leveled up than the Dallas Fuel leveling down, where you saw these knockout matches being a lot more competitive than before. Uh, that said, it's just the kind of litmus test that you have to take, where Shanghai seem to dominate and Dallas don't, despite APAC being kind of an objectively weaker region at the moment. You just have to kind of take that at face value and say that Shanghai is looking better, right?
Yeah.
That said, the Dallas Fuel do definitely have that kind just something special that makes them kind of tick and clutch things out. So we'll have to see how this team fares.
Yeah, I think this is definitely going to be the closest tournament we have out of the ones so far. Uh, the reason being that all of these teams have had really similar skill ceilings, I would say, in this meta. Like, sure, we've seen Dallas and Shanghai and Atlanta pop off way more often than the Chengdu Hunters, but when Chengdu has clicked, they've clicked really well, and I think like it's going to be a banger of a weekend because we are going to see 4 really promising teams joker out. And even though we do think some teams are better than the others, we have been wrong before, especially because these teams play in completely different regions, and like we really can't predict anything until their metas kind of clash and they are able to kind of try and adapt to each other's playstyles.
Yeah,
So
especially
yeah.
because the compositional matchup between the two regions is going to play a big part again. Because the Dallas Fuel, they're not that comfortable on that ball kind of play style, which is what Shanghai and Chengdu, uh, fielding Among clearly, are leaning heavily on, right? So you'll have to see if that the same TP strategy with the May is really gonna edge it out against the ball comp with the Tracer and Sombra that the APAC region is leaning more into. And then there's the Atlantarian who are incredibly comfortable on the double shield. So there's almost 3 different comps, largely speaking, that are gonna have very wildly different play styles that you're gonna see. And it's honestly kind of just which team rolls the dice better and which teams can execute their comp in a better way.
Yeah. Also, can I just can we just appreciate how like how well the meta is suited for each of these teams to kind of um like they still play all of the meta heroes, but they are still able to put their own spin on each composition because they all have their own comfort picks and signature heroes. So just the fact that the meta is finally allowing for comfort picks like these is a great testament to also the state of balance in this game. Because yeah, it's been really bad before, where last year we had basically 2 entire tournaments full of double shield poke comps, except one time it was Ash Tracer, the other time it was Ash Genji, and the meta isn't as stale as it used to be last year, which is absolutely fantastic. Because like long gone are the days where just like one style of compositions like goats was basically played on every single map. So we went from that to having like fixed metas in 222, like the double shield meta, like I said, and now we've got map based variations, and it's really great. Like appreciation post for the devs, I guess. Um, yeah,
I wouldn't get ahead of myself, honestly. I'm still expecting them to just jinx it and there'll be some very big brain playoffs patch that just changes everything. This upcoming tournament, for example, I think hit scans are going to have a very rough time. You're just going to see Kai, players like Kai, just like weeping on the bench, like let me in, because many hit scans are kind of got gutted at the moment. You're going to see a lot of these projectile-based heroes come in, pretty much exclusively, in my opinion. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. I mean, yes, it's interesting to watch the meta right now, but I wouldn't be too sure. 3 seasons watching this league already, there's something bound to go wrong with the balance, like it happens every year.
Yeah, I'm keeping my fingers crossed this time. Just because, like, even even in the May Melee meta, we saw a lot of variety. In the June Joust, it was more restricted because we had hero pools, and now every hero is once again available, so we are seeing more variety. So I think even though hit scans are going to be nerfed, we will still see a fair bit of variety, because even right now we aren't seeing too much of heroes like the McCree and Ash. So maybe, just maybe, we will see them just on a few maps in the next meta, but I guess it will, like, I'm pretty sure the countdown cup will be sort of one composition oriented, like the Neo Goats meta and the June Joust, because of the hero bans. But in the playoffs, we will probably see things open up once again when we have a new patch. But yeah, fingers crossed. I'm gonna be optimistic this time round. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And just, yeah, like, one final mention. There was just like one roster move in the past week, which is Mike Haley from the Guangzhou Charge being demoted kind of to being a two-way player, and he'll be joining Up Academy, which is the the contenders team. So I guess it's a good move, I feel, because he wasn't really doing anything for the Charge. So maybe his level of play will be effective in contenders. And meanwhile, I would urge them to kind of look for a backup hit scan player, because you can't expect Eileen to continue playing that role full time for you, because he's really more of a flanker specialist at this point. Any thoughts on this, Nightwing?
Yeah, Eileen has in the past definitely played that hit scan, and he's doing serviceably on that role at the moment. But that's not really what he kind of, for example, got his MVP nomination for. He didn't clutch it out at the end, but he did get a lot of votes for it on that kind of Sombra tracer flanker type role, as well as the Genji that he played really well in last year's Summer Showdown. So I think it would be a bit strange to kind of stretch your player out that thin, and so they definitely could use a full-time hit scan. Wink, 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 Godsby, free agent.
Yep.
Just cut the guy a break, you know. So yeah, Guangzhou could definitely use uh, probably another player, and Mikey gets some time off from the Guangzhou Charge team and gets to just go through the gauntlet again, get some more experience instead of being benched on that contenders team, and just work on his gameplay. So that's still a good opportunity for him, and they can sub him in occasionally. So yeah, probably a good move from the Guangzhou Charge team.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, anything to add before we round this episode off?
Nothing major. I think mostly I just like to mention once again that the compositional matchup is something I'm really looking forward to this upcoming week. And I think it will be kind of a roll of the dice in the sense that we will eventually find out which composition is actually the best suited, and that comp might just end up taking it. I think teams' individual skill will kind of definitely play a factor, as it does, because at the end of the day, you know, you can clutch it out in Overwatch, but even then, I think at the macro level, some comps some comp is going to be better than the other two, and that team will probably succeed. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see which team kind of rises from the ashes. So yeah.
Yeah, guys, do comment down and let us know which team you think will win the Summer Showdown and why. Because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of differing opinions considering how close some of these teams seem at the moment. So yeah, we'll be really happy to read what you have to say. And yeah, once again, thanks for watching. Do all the YouTube stuff, help the algorithm suggest our videos to more Overwatch League fans. And yeah, we will see you guys next week. Hope you have a nice Summer Showdown viewing.